nice skin, so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Mr. Craig Kilborn. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. All the episodes are special. This one is extra special. It's a friend of mine from Minnesota. He is a Minnesota broadcasting legend. I want to say 40 years at the CBS affiliate WCCO as the local sports anchor. And he's still working. He retired from CBS. He's working elsewhere. He'll tell us where he's working. Please welcome Mr. Mark Rosen.
Oh, my goodness. What a thrill. What a kick. I remember when you were an intern here in the Twin Cities, my friend.
Yes. I was an intern at, is it still CARE?
Yes, K-A-R-E, CARE, because they care.
Yes. You guys kicked their ass too, didn't you?
Well, it was back and forth. I would say, very popular name, Mr. Majors, who was out in California for a long time.
Yes, I know Paul.
Paul Majors. Paul was kicking some butt here for quite a while, but it was always a very competitive market and a lot of fun. We had some terrifically talented people in town, and it was just a great experience all the time.
I was there. Randy Shaver was there. He's still there, right?
He's the news anchor now. He's one of the few remaining guys I've been in the business as long as I have, and he switched from sports to news a few years back, which is not unusual in this day and age that the sports guys end up going to news. And Randy was one who made the transition pretty easily.
He's a nice guy. I'm glad you didn't go to news because I like talking sports with you. You know your stuff. Did you start at CCO, at the CBS affiliate, from high school or in college?
I was in high school. I was a junior in high school, and my neighbor was a gentleman named Phil Jones, who was just leaving WCCO to go to CBS, I think in Oklahoma City, then eventually went on to Washington, D.C. and covered as a White House correspondent and was there for many, many years. And I used to bug him about, I'd see him on the news and then I'd see him come home and cut his lawn. I'd say, hey, Phil, is there any way I can just go down there and hang out on weekends? They didn't have official internship programs at that time. And he said, let me call Hal Scott, who was the brother of Ray Scott, who was one of the best national announcers ever. And he goes, hey, I got this kid that's bugging me across the street. Do you mind if he comes down and hangs out? He goes, Hal said, yeah, sure. So I went down on a Saturday afternoon. I knew I fell in love with the place. It was a basement newsroom on 9th and LaSalle. Everybody smoked who was down there, and the legendary Dave Moore was the anchor. And, and I remember hanging out there, and then I went home, and I just remember telling my parents, I got to go back on Monday. I just have to. I just had the bug. So I was hanging out. I kept hanging out, and normally in internship programs, after 3 months, 4 months, they didn't even have high school kids back then. Now you have to be a college junior, I believe. I just never left. And eventually, in fact, I think August of that year, they hired me part-time, which was unheard of. So I was taking high school classes and working at WCCO part-time. I learned how to type, ripping wire copy and the whole thing. But Craig, it was a Field of Dreams newsroom. There were probably a dozen reporters that went on to become CBS correspondents, not just reporters. It was like having an outfield of, Mays, Mantle, and Aaron. I mean, it was that kind of a newsroom that I was introduced to at a young age without really knowing it.
And then, so how many years? I read when you retired a few years ago that it was 40 years. Is that true that you were at CCO for 40?
Actually, close to 50.
Really? But you're not that old. You didn't start when you were 10 years old. So
I was 17, 18.
Okay.
So do the math. And, I was 67, 68 when I left. And, I was going to leave, probably a year and a half after when I did, but I left to become a caregiver for my wife, who sadly was diagnosed with glioblastoma brain cancer. Right. So I knew I had to kind of pull the plug on my work and just be home all the time, and that's what was necessary. But it was the right decision, right time, and did the right thing. So it was just shy of 50 years that I was there, but so it's astonishing. I know I think about it now, and I have to pinch myself with all the people I met and the events I covered and everything else.
Did you also, I remember, you were so popular and still are popular, but you had a restaurant, Rosen's.
Yes.
How many years?
I'll tell you, we opened it in October of 1991. And as you recall, that was kind of a monumental year in sports for Minnesota. We opened it a week before the Twins started their postseason run to the World Series, their second World Series, winning the other one in '87. So we had opened it, and we had just a crazy time in there. I remember Tommy Lasorda came in and was behind the bars giving away beers, and the Twins went on to go to the World Series, and the place was packed. And I remember getting a call saying during Game 7, they said, "Hey, Charlie Sheen is in the restaurant here tonight. You got to come over." And I said, "Well, I'm coming over as soon as this game's over." And I did my work, and of course the streets were mobbed. People were going crazy, and I walked down to my bar, and we kept the cops didn't care. They kept it open all night. And Charlie Sheen was there, and he was very hospitable because he had won money. He bet the home team every single game, and of course the home team won every single game of the '91 World Series. So he was very happy. And we were there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So
that's great. That's great.
It was a lot of fun. Then we had the snowstorm of the century a week later. So it turned out to be quite a time.
I remember somebody telling me Tommy Lasorda had bragged about, he was on the road. Every Italian restaurant he would go to on the road, he never had to pick up the bill. He used to brag about that because he was such a personality. How many years was the restaurant open?
Well, I was in it for about 9 years. I mean, we had, I mentioned 91. We had the World Series. We had the Final Four that year. We had some huge events in town. And I was probably in it for 8, 9 years. And I appreciate my boss allowing me to do it. And that's when, First Avenue North, as you know, was really kind of hopping with the Loon Cafe.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I honestly didn't want to feel like I wanted to hang out with frat boys on a Friday night. So I gradually got out of the business. They kept my name on it for a while, but it was a great experience. It's sort of like the broadcasting business. No matter what you did, you had to do it again the next day and make sure people were happy with the results, because one bad review, one bad meal, people would have word of mouth. But it was a good experience for me, and I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, restaurant business is tough. I always tell people I'm glad I'm not in the business. I've been asked to invest in the past, and I never will. Sure. It's a very small margin of profit, but I love to go out, and the people are. Obviously they have to be nice to the customers. I can go once a year. It's not being very loyal to a restaurant. I'll go once a year and they're fawning all over me. So it's
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a tough business. Did you, now you're a Minnesotan. You were born there, correct? Unlike me.
I was born really right where I'm speaking to you from St. Louis Park, Minnesota, right near the West End, right where the Cinerama Theater was here, and right where the San Francisco Giants, had they not gone to San Francisco, were going to play baseball. They were moving from New York, and they had it was named Candlestick Drive here, and Horace Stoneham was going to move the team here, but Walter O'Malley picked up the phone and goes, "Hey, I'm kind of lonely out here in California. Would you mind coming all the way out west? Because we don't want to travel around the country. We'd like to play some teams here in California." So the Giants bypassed Minnesota and went straight to California. They had a farm team at old Met Stadium.
Yeah.
The Boston Red Sox did, the Minneapolis Millers. In fact, Willie Mays played here. For the Giants for a while, but at Nicollet Park. But when Met Stadium was built, before the Twins were even in existence, the Boston Red Sox had the Millers here. So, but yeah, there was supposed to be a baseball team here. So that's where I grew up, right next door.
Do you remember, my dad was a Willie Mays fan. That was his favorite player. Mm-hmm. Do you remember, because we all have our own memories. You've seen so many sporting events, but growing up in Minnesota, I went to some Twins games. My dad took us to a lot of Twins games, Rodney Klein, Carew, and Cesar Tovar.
Oh boy.
But at the end of his career, Willie Mays was on the Mets, and it was an exhibition game. And they had a home run contest between Willie Mays and Harmon Killebrew. And Willie won that. And I think it was like 5 home runs to 2 is my vague memory. Does that ring a bell to you?
Well, what rings a bell was watching that old home run derby show.
Yeah.
That, it would be about as dry as you could possibly get it. Unlike the All-Star game festivities, it would be like, as you mentioned, Willie Mays against Harmon Kilby at old Wrigley Field, and whoever was not hitting would be up in the booth with the announcer. And Harmon, of course, was not the most loquacious guy in the world, not in terms of, he goes, "Oh boy, Willie sure got a hold of that one."
Exactly. And it's so funny. It's so slow moving. It's like
it is.
Yeah.
But I do remember it though. Yeah, and I remember interviewing Willie when I was a young kid, and with his San Francisco Giants uniform on. He didn't want to answer any of my questions because he said they were too controversial. You got to talk to the commissioner about interleague play someday. And I asked him that question, but
I did. I did have this as a note, and I want to ask you. Because you were the sports guy, but you weren't necessarily writing opinionated columns in the paper. But so I don't know how many opinions you had. Over the years, did you have some run-ins with either athletes or coaches or owners?
Oh, sure. I mean, that took quite a while before I felt, in a position with my credibility to, be more specific. In sports, I had a lot more leeway. And sure, I had plenty of, I wouldn't say, heated confrontations, but certainly a bunch, mostly with Viking players, because I was covering them on a regular basis. The Twins, although Tom Kelly wasn't happy. One day he came up to me and goes, I didn't like what you said about our pitching staff or something last night. I went, hey, sorry. I mean, I'm here, face the music. And I always felt, and I think that's always the earmark of a good reporter, is that, not to hide behind whether you're a columnist or a sports broadcaster, that you go and continue to be present, to face the people and the teams. And I think that's where I garnered a lot of respect, because I wouldn't hide behind the microphone.
Right.
If I said something, Keith Millard of the Vikings wants to yell at me, and he did, go right ahead. But I'm going to be here the next day and the next day and the next day. And that's how you earn the respect of the people. And they don't, sometimes they would understand that you had a job to do. It was never that. I mean, Kirby got mad at me once in a while, but nothing specific that carried over for a long period of time.
I think, if I remember correctly, you're like 6'4" or so, I believe. Does that sound
6'5",
right? 6'5",
6'6", yeah.
Did you play any sports growing up, and were you any good?
I played baseball a lot, because that was when the Twins came to town in 1961, and so did the Vikings, but baseball was all we cared about. I collected all the baseball cards that my mom unfortunately reminded me that that she tossed them out. I had, probably, $150,000 of baseball cards, my bicycle spokes. But I played a lot of baseball, and I was okay. I was more of a good field, no hit. Good first baseman, little league, Babe Ruth, played a little high school, but kind of rode the bench, didn't play a lot. Then eventually got into tennis and played quite a bit of tennis, not, competitively, but I played in a lot of charity matches, with Andre Agassi.
Could you beat Guardsy in tennis?
No. Guardsy, listen, I covered Guardsy was a 2-time state champion, for crying out loud.
Right.
Oh, a lot of people don't think that he won that second one. No, Guardsy was at a whole together different level. But I played a lot of tennis with Ahmad Rashad, and played in a lot of those celebrity tournaments. I played at Met Center in front of 15,000 with Chris Everett against Martina Navratilova and Herschel Walker. And
that's fun.
So I had those moments where tennis became my sport. As people started picking up the game of golf, I enjoy tennis a lot more than golf.
I wasn't
that great at it.
I don't play golf. I used to play tennis, but I'm just, I make a couple spectacular shots, but I have no serve. If you have to tap in the second serve, you might as well not play. I can't stand that. And when you're good in basketball and you're no good in the other ones, it's like I can't deal with this. I just go hiking.
I don't know. I thought you might be the pickleball master by now.
I haven't tried it. I haven't either. The fads.
No.
Did you, because you're a Minnesotan, fish or hunt growing up?
My dad was not either. I started fishing probably as a young adult a little bit. I still love it. I still enjoy going up north and, getting a guide and catching, I did it just a short time ago, 1 month and a half ago. Went up there with my fiance, Karin, and went walleye fishing, which is our state fish, and caught 3-4 really keepers and brought them. They filleted them for me, brought them home, threw them on the grill, and Loved it. I mean, I love the fresh fish. I love, love doing that.
So
not on a regular basis,
right.
though. No.
So we tried to fish. We weren't great. My dad was like a city slicker. He's from New York, New Jersey, but we weren't that great.
Right.
But when I go back a couple, the last few years, I go and I say, I want to get some walleye. I love growing up in Minnesota. I want to get some walleye. But the guy says, just get the trout. It's better. So is walleye any good, or should I just get the trout?
Oh, no. Walleye is really good.
Okay.
I mean, you can fillet it. There's a lot of different ways you can prepare it. But to me, walleye is a great eating fish. Perch are good. I mean, people catch bass, but to me, walleye is my personal favorite. Other people have other favorites, but I would not. And that's the easiest one to fish for, I think, in our lakes. That,
right.
Depending on what kind of lure you use a leech or whatever. And I just have fun getting out on the lake in the morning once in a while with people who know what they're doing, and because it's a big lake like a Leech Lake up in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and you could be out there all day and fish. The technology is such now they can literally see the fish under your boat. Doesn't mean you're going to grab your leech, but they're there. They can find them. And
I should tell people listening, it really is the land of 10,000 lakes, and they say there are more than 10,000 officially.
Yes.
So
most of the time they're frozen.
Yes, and some people go ice fishing. I've seen people go. I think I've done it. Okay, here's what I want to ask you about. So they say it's a hockey state, but we know what the number one sport is, the number one team is, and it's the Minnesota Vikings. That's pretty. Everyone kind of knows that, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, this is ever since they got here in '61, and I think there was a lull for a little bit in the early '90s when they kind of fell off the map. They were not selling out games. They were blacked out. Of course, that's when they had blackouts, and when they were in the Metrodome, and it was just kind of a lackadaisical feeling. The team had kind of fallen flat, and then when they drafted Randy Moss in 1998, everything changed.
Yeah,
everything changed, and then ever since that day, this team is selling out every game. But the Vikings have been number one. Even though the Twins have had the success with the two World Series, and they shared a stadium for the longest time, both stadiums, both at Met Stadium and the Metrodome. It's a Vikings town. I mean, you can basically, and I'm on the radio station here that is a Vikings station, and there's never an off day. You can talk about the Vikings anytime.
So I started following the Vikings early 70s. I was born in Kansas City, and I had cousins down there, and they sent me the Super Bowl souvenir brochure when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl against the Vikings. And then I started watching the Vikings. I memorized all Lenny Dawson, number 16, Ed Podolak, 14, Bobby Bell, 78. I memorized that. But I was a Chuck Foreman fan, and then I was an Anthony Carter fan. And I live and die for those 3 hours. It's just the way it is. And I think my question I want to know is, what is your perspective on the Vikings never winning a Super Bowl? And does it align with the suffering Viking fans in the state?
It kind of does. I think, and having plenty of discussions with the late Bud Grant, who just passed away, as you know, not that long ago. He was a coach and got him to 4 Super Bowls. I would safely say that in each of because the Vikings never led in any of those games, not once. And I would say, if we look back on it, even talking to some of the players, in fact, they're going to have a reunion before their opener against Tampa Bay here. The 73-74 teams. I'm going to be hosting an event at their facilities the night before, which will be fun for me. But I would say every time, whether it be Kansas City that first year, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the unbeaten Miami, the Dolphins, and then finally the Oakland Raiders, the Vikings were honestly just not as good as those teams.
Correct.
They were not.
Yes. So
it wasn't a fluke.
Yes. So my point is, and I have a different attitude, but I've said to people, like some Minnesota fans have said, we're always good. The Vikes are always good, is what I say. Just be grateful. Hopefully we'll win a Super Bowl. But it's not like I have friends that are Jets fans, and they win one Super Bowl and they're bad for a long time. But these guys say, I'd rather win one Super Bowl and be bad for a long time. And I don't want to. I mean, we're lucky to have if you took our top 5 receivers, we might have the best 5 receivers in NFL history when you have Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson and Chris Carter. And I don't know who we put after that, Ahmad Rashad or Sammy White, but we have Anthony Carter. But I'm grateful that we're always good. Obviously, I want to win a Super Bowl. Here's my question. When should we have won the Super Bowl? You're right that we were not as good as those teams in 0-4 in the Super Bowl. I have 2 times we could have won the Super Bowl. What do you think those 2 times are? When do you think we were the best team and we should have won?
I think one of them was the strike-shortened year in 1987 when the Vikings lost that playoff game. They went to New Orleans and beat the Saints. Then they went out to San Francisco.
Greatest game ever. I love it.
When they had Joe Montana and Steve Young, and Montana was benched for Steve Young, and the Vikings dominated that game.
Unreal.
Then they went to Washington to play the then Redskins and could have won that game.
Bob threw it to Darren Nelson in the end zone instead of giving it to Anthony Carter, something like that. Does that sound right?
He fumbled the ball, and had they gone on to that Super Bowl, I think they would have won that one in 1987. And then the other one to me that still sticks in my craw more than the Brett Favre year was the 1998 team, when they had the most prolific offense in the history of the NFL, with Randall Cunningham and Randy Moss's rookie year and Chris Carter, the best offensive line with Randall McDaniel, arguably one of the greatest guards in the history of the NFL. And a good defense didn't have to be a great defense. They won most games by 3-4 touchdowns. Yeah. And that was a 15-1 team.
That was the year we should have won. And then,
yes.
And then everything else, everyone would exhale. Now, the Favre year was interesting because I always look to see, do we have the best team in football? Okay, no, there's not a dominant team. So do you get hot in the playoffs? Mm-hmm. But that game at New Orleans with Brett Favre, which ended up being Bountygate, prior to the game on Fox, they made their predictions, and Howie Long said exactly what I thought. Vikings are a better team, but they won't win. And they didn't win. And they had 5 turnovers. And then somebody says to me, a few years later, oh, God, they would have beaten the Colts because they couldn't stop Adrian Peterson. Like, we would have won the Super Bowl then. But the 15-1 year is when we should have won, obviously.
That was the best offensive team I had ever seen. Their defense was okay. Unfortunately, and they would have played the Denver Broncos with John Elway in that Super Bowl. Johnny Randall, their top defensive lineman, was hurt in the waning moments of their first playoff game against Arizona, and he was playing on one leg against Atlanta in that NFC Championship game. So they would have been beaten up pretty badly defensively, but I still think they would have won. I know the Denver Broncos were in mortal fear of playing the Vikings. They were very, very happy, obviously, when Atlanta won that game. That team was unstoppable.
Yep.
And that one still to this day stings. I was counting on, I'd not covered a Super Bowl. I was going down. I remember running down to the field the last 2 minutes when they allowed us on the field, and Gary Anderson was lining up for that 39-yard field goal, and he hadn't missed a field goal all year. And I'm saying to myself, I'm finally get to cover the Vikings in a Super Bowl. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
And of course he missed, but that's like, saying, well, Bill Buckner let that ball go through his legs. It's not like the Red Sox didn't have other chances to win.
Right.
They did. They had another game. The Vikings still could have won that game. They gave up a last-second minute touchdown, and they lost it, as we know, in overtime. But they hadn't played in many close games that year.
Yeah.
And I think they really didn't know how to react.
It was. I just think how it would change everyone's attitude, and now it's so much pressure on the fan base. They want so badly. They're desperate. And I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime. We hope so. We hope so. I want to talk about this year's team, but I wanted to say something. So growing up down in Hastings, my dad took us to Twins games. He took us to the Pillsbury Basketball Classic at Met Center where we watched the Gophers.
Yes.
But you might be surprised at this. Craigers has never been to a Vikings game ever. I've never gone. He said he couldn't. They were sold out at Met Stadium. The erector set. He couldn't get tickets. Now, I don't know if that's true or maybe they were too expensive. This is in the 70s when they went to the Super Bowls. And then I had a chance to see him out here. I actually bought tickets and I sold them because we were playing the Rams a couple of years ago and I said we're going to lose. And we did lose. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to watch them lose. at the
Right.
here in LA, and then, the commute back and blah blah blah. So the game against Tampa Bay, I'm scheduled to be in town, and that will be the first Vikings game I ever have been to.
I can't believe it. And that's going to be a special one, the opener here.
Yep.
Yeah. I used to have student season tickets. They were $1 a ticket. I sat on third base, right behind the goalpost before they had the nets up. And I used to go to those games back, in the mid 60s perhaps, and the Vikings would lose 45-38 and Tarkenton would, it would be a fun game, but I'd have a ticket for $1, and when they'd kick the extra point, the usher would want the person who caught the football to throw the ball back, but the guy would invariably leave the stadium because the ball was worth more than the ticket. But $1 a ticket. Now they're a little more than that.
Right.
But I can't believe it. Yeah, it's going to be a special game. They're going to honor Bud Grant that day with everything, and there's a lot of special things going to be happening. So I can't wait to see it for the opener.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask, is it too hard to say, do you have a favorite Minnesota Viking of all time? Your favorite?
Yes. Jim Marshall.
Oh, wrong way Marshall. Yeah.
Yeah. Jim is I got to be very close with him. I still am. He's been experiencing a lot of health issues, and I visit him at times when he's up for it. I go and see him over at his house here nearby, and I've sat down with him, and he's still as glib as ever, and that big hearty laugh of his. But one of the big injustices in my mind is that he did not get into the Hall of Fame, and he for longevity, productivity, fumble recoveries. I mean, it was part of the Purple People Eaters, but just an incredible human being. And I get emotional talking about him because, like a lot of players of that era, they're suffering a lot because of the football. And his body has fallen, and it's a miracle he's still alive, not so much from just some sort of disease, but I mean, the guy should have been dead 100 times in a snowmobile accident. He slammed the hang glider into the side of a high school. He almost died from tonsillitis. He's a miracle man, just a great human. And I was pretty close after a long time with Bud, since I did the show with him for quite a few years as well. So, and I still see Alan Page because I'm involved in his foundation. So I mean, there are guys like that from that era that I'm very close with still. Yeah, that are hurting a lot.
The Jim Marshall, for the young viewers, was part of the Purple People Eaters with Alan Page and Carl Eller, and was it Jim Sutherland? Right? Was it Jim?
First it was Gary Larson.
Gary Larson. Okay. Is it Jim Sutherland? Is that a guy or not? Is that a player?
Doug Sutherland took over for he took over for Gary Larson. But yeah, the three mainstays, as you mentioned, were Marshall and Page and Eller. Hey, Carl's still around as well.
Right, I see him. I was a Chuck Foreman guy. That was my favorite. Chuck Foreman was my guy. I do remember the Bud Grant show, and Ahmad Rashad would be on. And Bud would call him Ahmad.
Right.
And I heard a story a few years ago, Ahmad Rashad said, the only guy to pronounce my name correctly is Bud Grant. It's Ahmad. Is that crazy?
Well, yeah, Bud asked Ahmad, how do you want me to pronounce your name? And that's how he answered it. He was the only one, as you mentioned, that ever called him that. I did the show with Ahmad. And Bud allowed Ahmad to do the show with me. We started the Rashad Rosen Report after he made that Hail Mary catch against the Cleveland Browns. Yep. And Ahmad and I were together on Sunday nights, and that kind of kickstarted his broadcasting career. We had a blast together, but I never called him Ahmad. He didn't care. Right. If he had said, "Listen, my name is Ahmad, I'll call you Ahmad."
Exactly.
But we had a blast together. Oh man, we had fun doing that show. And that started my run of, many, many years of doing Sunday night Viking shows, and then eventually Sports Sunday shows as well. But Ahmad was the one who started it.
What do you think of the new coach, Kevin O'Connell?
I like him a lot personally, and I think he's the right guy for the right time, especially kind of post Mike Zimmer, grumpy Mike Zimmer-ish. His pedigree speaks for itself. I think he's very relatable, not just to the players, but to the fans. And, obviously coming off an inaugural season where he won 13 regular season games is a good start. And And for Kirk Cousins to have, for the first time in his career with the Vikings, to have not the same offensive coordinator, because he's calling the plays.
Right.
He's very innovative. Comes from that, that Rams pedigree and what he was doing. And I like him. I think he knows what it takes to push the right buttons with these guys, and he's relatable, but he's also can be tough on them. And I think Viking fans have embraced him without question. I mean, but you're only as good as your next game.
Yeah, I always try to look at it where I remember I talked to Warren Moon years ago at some function, and the offense was so good and the defense had been good the year before. And I said, what happened? He goes, I don't know. We're supposed to be a good defense. You try to align when you have a good defense and a good offense, if possible, obviously. But do you think Brian Flores can do the job? I really, really like him, and I love what I'm hearing in training camp. What are your thoughts on Brian Flores and the defense has to improve because they were so bad last year?
Well, and that's why they jettisoned a lot of big name players as well, because I think change had to be made, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a productivity standpoint. So Flores comes in with a great reputation, obviously, as a defensive coach, and he may very well be one and done here. I mean,
I know.
He should have been, maybe a head coach already, but hearing what's going on out there, obviously we're not going to see much of anything in the rest of the preseason, but he's got some pieces that he's going to have come through for him, especially a young secondary, because we know it's a passing league. And his whole thing is putting pressure on the quarterback and getting Danielle Hunter signed and motivated, because he's got a lot on the table, is probably the biggest thing they've done. But some names are going to have to come through that we just haven't seen before. Yep. But I think his scheme is so, here talking to Harrison Smith, who's the veteran on this defense. He's like a kidney candy store. He's so pumped up about it, but it's all about still making the plays. He can only call the shots from the sidelines, so the guys have to execute them. But I think the defense is going to be better than people expect. But we're not going to have answers to those questions. Not so much the opening game when you're here for the Tampa Bay, but keep in mind right after that Thursday night again, they go to Philadelphia to play the Eagles.
I just don't understand it. This is how I look at the schedules. I look at it, road games out of the division. And I don't know why, when Mike Zimmer was there, every year we played at Seattle, and I still have no idea why. I don't know why we're going to Philadelphia again this year. And that's a loss. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Well, it could be a loss, and very well might be a loss, but what it needs to be, unlike a year ago, is a competitive loss. And I think that's the thing where the Vikings have fallen flat sometimes in these nationally televised games on the road early in the season, is that it's one thing they should beat Tampa Bay, but they're going to Philly, and they know what that place is like. I was there for that NFC Championship game when all hell broke loose, and they got killed after the Miracle here, Minneapolis Miracle game. But they have to make a good showing. Yeah. They have to play like they're a competitive team that's interested in winning not only their division but advancing in the playoffs. And if they lose by a field goal or something, so be it. But they can't go in there and get blown out. That stench would stay with them for a while.
Mark, I was raised not to use the word low class, but the Philly fans are rowdy. I'll just say rowdy. I mean, I know guys that are who are out there, Philly fans, and they say I have no part of these Philly fans. They know that they're a bunch of hooligans. I'm glad you're okay after that game, but you didn't get.
Well, I heard a lot about it. Obviously, covering it as part of the media, I didn't experience much until the next day. We were at the airport, and our flight got canceled because there was a snowstorm back here in the Twin Cities. But I spoke to a lot of Viking fans who said they were physically accosted.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Punched. Keep in mind, Philadelphia won by 4 touchdowns. That I would not wear a Viking jersey or any road jersey into Philadelphia.
Right.
It was ugly. It wasn't, like you suck and your team sucks. And, it's like Packer Viking fans kind of have a beer together most of the time afterwards. This was get the hell out of town or you're going to get hurt. And I heard that from a lot of people. And I wasn't bashful about going after Philly. And I heard it from Eagle fans, which is fine.
Right.
But, low class is and I hate that, of course there's good fans there too as well, but it was a double dose of humiliation after what happened here at the Minneapolis Miracle, because the Super Bowl was here that year.
Yeah, I know. That would have been, well, there was this stat that said a team that comes back and wins a playoff game in the last seconds always goes on to lose and by more than 25. I guess it's such a high. It's like it's kind of like last year when we had the miracle win at Buffalo and then we come home. Wasn't the Cowboys 40-3?
Yeah,
I think that was it.
40-3.
It's such an emotional thing. You just can't get ready. But by the way, I wanted to ask you, I was a Mike Zimmer fan, and it was definitely time to go. He's definitely different than KOC, and I embrace KOC. I think he's a great guy. I'm pulling for him. I want him to be an offensive guru. I want him to be creative. So I'm pulling for him. But I liked Mike Zimmer from afar because he was not Minnesota nice. He was tough as hell. He slept in the office. I'm worried about him because no one's heard from him. Do you know anything about Mike happening now or not?
I'm a little surprised he didn't catch on. It might be a contractual thing. I know the Vikings are still paying him as far as getting a defensive coach because he has so many connections. Even kind of going back to the Bill Parcells being a protege and understanding that he's got a very sharp defensive mind. So he may very well just need a break. I mean, again, this is second year, but I think he's living down on his farm. He came up here the last time I saw him was for Bud Graham's memorial service, a private service, and Mike flew in here. I did say hello to him. That was kind of the extent of it. But that's when he was here. Otherwise, he's been out of sight, out of mind. I haven't heard much else about what he's doing, other than the fact that he's not. He lost his son, which was tragic. Adam. So I mean, who knows personally what kind of effect that had on him, but. Yeah, I mean, he knows his X's and O's defensively. There's no doubt that he could still coach even at his advanced age in the National Football League.
One more thing on the Vikes. So I think we have a top 10 offense. I was and remain a big Dalvin Cook fan. I'm hoping he plays well with the Jets. Do you think we're a top 10 offense this year?
Yes.
Okay.
I do because of obviously, it goes right back to, the first conversation goes back to Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best receiver in the game right now. At least he's already been named second best player in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes. And they have, KJ Osborne and now the kid from USC, Jordan Addison, who's already turning heads here. He's going to play a lot and he's getting a lot of rave reviews. The running game should be better, but I think the biggest addition with the loss of Dalvin Cook isn't so much that Alexander Madison's going to be the number one running back, is that they picked up the Josh Oliver, who's a humongous human being. And I think what Kevin O'Connell does so well is, okay, you're going to try to stop JJ? All right, guess what? We're going to ram the ball down your throats. We'll see how the running game works with Oliver leading the way along with his offensive line, punching them out that way. So, and then open things up with JJ, who's, I've seen them all, and obviously Moss is the best I've seen, but this kid is special.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can find a way of stopping him. He's highly motivated. He's got a big contract that he's probably about to sign, if not the beginning of the season at some point. So the Vikings are not going to let him out of town.
Right.
But I think the offense should be a top 10 offense. There's something different about Kirk Cousins this year. I know he was mentioned a lot, got a lot of play because of the quarterback series on Netflix, but he seems looser. He seems happier. He seems, he's highly motivated. This is potentially his last year with Minnesota. He does not have a contract for next year. And at 35, he's kind of seen it all, done it all. And I think he knows in order to be in that conversation with the Josh Allens and the Mahomes and all, he's got to win in the postseason. That's the only way it's going to happen. You can't have that conversation. They win 13 games last year. Big deal. You get flattened by the Giants here. A lot of that was defensively, but you don't win in the postseason, you're not going to advance your profile in this league.
I've said this before. Obviously, you can't lose a playoff game at home like they did to the Giants, but by losing that, you avoided getting shellacked at San Francisco. Because I have a lot of respect for their defense, San Francisco. It's going to be a great year. It's always fun. I just hope we stay healthy, and I'm excited. I like Kirk solid. I like that we finally have a decent offensive line. We might need to replace the right guard, but we're getting a lot of details
closer
here. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy. Here we go. Timberwolves. That's my team. Now I
know it is.
I actually think I'm very optimistic, mainly because of I don't see a dominant team in the NBA. I look at it like, who's the dominant team? So Denver won. We played, even though we lost 4-1, I really liked how we played in Game 5 there. The Rudy thing, I don't care. I'm pulling for him. I know the defense is better. I like Cat. Anthony Edwards is the man. Let me focus on Cat. I think of you as a reasonable guy. I know Cat bothers people. I know he's a little quirky with the reach-in fouls and his personality. What's your gut on Cat?
I think this is the most important year of his career this year, because he's been talking a good game kind of off the court a little bit about, watch out, here we come. You haven't done anything yet. He hasn't done really anything personally to elevate his teammates. And I think this is a huge year for him. He knows deep down this is Anthony Edwards' team now. Mm-hmm. And Cat is the sidekick. It used to be the other way around. But having said that, his skill set is unique still in the NBA, as you know. And he can knock down the 3-point shots. He has to be, I think he missed 60-some games last year. His health is of paramount importance for this basketball team and for himself. But I think this is a huge year for him, because I think he can assume a leadership role alongside Anthony Edwards at 22 that will help elevate this team. When the Nuggets come out and say, "Look we got the toughest test from the Timberwolves in the postseason," which is kind of surprising considering the Wolves, as you know, were missing 2 of their best players.
Right.
They have an opportunity. But we don't know how the experiment, the Wolves are still rolling the dice with Gobert and Towns, saying, can 2 big men coexist like this in this day and age in the NBA? We haven't seen the results of that. And a lot at stake for Tim Connolly and for the Timberwolves organization to, as they say, run it back this year with the same group, basically, with a couple of little additions on the bench. But yeah, this is a big year for Cat. I mean, he was an all-star, but he missed all the games last year. Fans are a little suspect about where his head's at, and it's time. I mean, if he wants to be considered one of the best big men in the NBA, he's got to do it, and do it this year.
Definitely has to be this year. And I've gone on record saying I'm not opposed to trading him, but not yet. Let me just see. Because if they stay healthy, and I don't see anybody, we'll see how Phoenix, they have Durant, they added what's the guy from the Wizards, Bradley Beal, and they have
Bradley Beal.
Yeah. But I'm hoping. I mean, I know locally, I think we can get in the top 5 in the West. Nationally, I've talked to my friends who cover it, and they're like, yeah, they'll be in the play-in again. They'll be fighting for a play-in. So I don't think they know what I know, and maybe I mean, we're kind of special. I tell you what I do like. I didn't know Kyle Anderson was quite that good. Now, I saw him on the Spurs in Memphis, but he did have, I think, a career year with the Wolves. So now I always do this where I'm optimistic. This guy, Shake Milton, who I didn't watch much at Philly, I like him. I mean, I like his game, and I think he's going to really be a fan favorite. I'm hoping. I don't know if you have an opinion on this guy.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of him. I know that he's kind of going to take over the Patrick Beverley sort of role a little bit with an infusion of energy and shooting and everything else he can do coming off the bench. Slow-mo, Kyle Anderson, to me, was really impressive. But, I think Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels has even grown even this year. I think I'm a big Jaden McDaniels fan. They got some good players on this team, and I think that's you got to have that depth. You got to have the energy, and then Ant is so off the charts motivated to be one of the best in the world. There's no reason they should be. They should have won a whole bunch more games last year, but I don't think it's unrealistic to think they could be a top 4, top 5 seed. That should be their goal this year in the West. I mean, it's crazy to think of it any other way. And Chris Finch, I think, is the right guy. You have a lot of respect for him. I know.
Yep.
I think the players respond to him. He's made some mistakes. He admitted it during some of the playoff games, but this is going to be a fun year, I think, for the Wolves. And look at this town has got 3 of the best young superstars in sports with Anthony Edwards, Justin Jefferson, and Kirill Kaprizov with the Wild. You throw in Byron Buxton, unfortunately, who's hurt and hasn't been productive. that hurts a lot. But those three guys in particular at that young age have taken over their respective professional teams.
By the way, the Wild play over at XL in St. Paul, and I hear it's a great experience. I don't go to the Wild. It's a fun place to watch hockey, correct? That's what everyone tells me.
It is. It's a great arena. Listen, I went to a concert there a couple of weeks ago to see Earth, Wind, and Fire and Lionel Richie, and it was packed, and they sell out a lot. They have a very, very loyal fan base, but the short version of what the Wild are dealing with is that because they paid Zach Parise and Ryan Suter all this money years ago, they've been strapped with the cap for. They got 2 more years to go until they can really go out and spend money and get the kind of players they need to make a Stanley Cup run.
Right.
And the fans have to accept that. They have accepted it. It's grudgingly. They just can't get out of the first round. And it's been very frustrating for people who invest quite a bit of money, quite frankly, to go watch that team.
So this is what bothers me. This is not about sports. This is about the cities. But I grew up, my dad took a transfer down 20 minutes south of St. Paul. He worked in St. Paul. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, I just, I lived in California out of college. I lived in San Francisco, right. Then LA, and later New York. But when I go back, I like to go to St. Paul. And I stayed at the St. Paul Hotel one time a few years. This was when Kurt Rambis was the coach. I flew in with my brother, and we went to a couple games, the Johnny Flynn era.
Oh, good Lord.
And the concierge at the St. Paul Hotel said his history teacher at Augsburg told him, think of St. Paul as the last city built in the East and Minneapolis as the first city built in the West. And my brother and I went to Summit Avenue and saw all the old homes. And we fell in love with a restaurant there at the Hams building called Meritage, a nice French restaurant. Mm-hmm. But I come to town to see the Wolves, and everybody, my buddy Charlie Swanson, well, actually he likes St. Paul. Charlie likes, he likes the St. Paul Grill. But most of you guys are snobs and you don't go to St. Paul.
There's a grain of truth to that. Although last weekend I was with my fiance and my other attorney, lawyer Lambert. We were taking them out for their anniversary. We went to the Lexington, Lex.
I've heard of it.
The historic Lexington, yes, which is wonderful. And we had to stay at a bed and breakfast, which was built like in the early 1900s. There's a great bit of charm. It's a real neighborhood. It's much more. You have your Italian section, you got your Polish section, you got. St. Paul's got a lot of charm. I know I get ribbed all the time about never going over there, which is not true, but I go along with it. That's fine. But the St. Paul Hotel, I covered state high school hockey tournaments there for years and years on Channel 4, and I love the St. Paul Hotel. I was just there for dinner a couple of weeks ago as well. There's a lot of great places in St. Paul.
We should point out. You
just can't find your way around there.
Right. It's a small area. It's a small town, I think, from what I can tell. But we should point out that your fiancée, Karin, is good people because she likes martinis.
Oh, yes. You discovered that. Oh, yeah. She definitely likes her martinis.
That's great.
Shaken, not stirred. No, I don't know. She does like them. And I got very fortunate. And we're getting married September 1st. And after a very, very difficult time, but life goes on. You move forward. Yep. And she's the lead counsel for the Vikings, so she likes her sports and likes her Vikings, and we have a great time together. She's, as you know, a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Congratulations on that. We are now going to go to your top 5 movies of all time, and then we're going to do a very abbreviated Life Gorgeous quiz. I only have 2 questions today because I know we're going to spend a little time on the movies. Now, you are a movie buff, but the night we were out with a group eating and we did the movies, I honestly don't remember your list. So I'm curious to see what it is or remember what it is.
Just to preface it, my dad was a booker for Paramount Pictures for 40 plus years. He'd go to these small towns, even like Hastings. I wouldn't call that a small town.
It's small.
If you had a theater, if you had a theater there, he would book a Paramount picture for weeks or whatever it would be. So I got introduced to going to screenings when I was very young and see all these movies before they would come out. So it passed it along to my kids. And so I've had a love of movies for my entire life. when you told me to, the top 5, it's pretty much impossible because of errors. But I mean, I had to narrow it down to top 10, but I can certainly try with top 5. You want me to rattle them off for you?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, I have to go one old school one, and that's Rear Window. I'm a big Hitchcock fan, and I still, when that movie comes on, and I see Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly, to my money, is still one of the most beautiful women, captivating on screen, captures the lens, and just, and her just sitting there with her little, hanging out at Jimmy Stewart's apartment with his binoculars, and she's got her little negligee on, and I'm going, hey, turn around and look at her.
Yeah.
What are you checking out Raymond Burr for?
Exactly. That's a great one. Yeah, I'm a Hitchcock fanatic. You can choose. I choose North by Northwest, but there's so many of them, and Rear Window is a great one.
Yeah, I'd have to take that. I would say another one. I'm a big Western guy. I grew up watching Westerns, and my dad took me to all the time. But I think modern day, if you want to call it that, I think Unforgiven was one of my favorite movies with Gene Hackman, the great Gene Hackman and Clint Eastwood, and just the storyline. I love that a lot. I mean, Tombstone would be. I've seen Tombstone probably 80 times, but as far as a movie goes, Unforgiven was right up there.
My friend says that's Clint Eastwood's best movie. So that is a very good movie.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan, hard to beat The Dark Knight. I think because my appreciation and love for Heath Ledger and the dialogue in that movie. Forget the action. I think the lessons and the quotable lines from Heath Ledger as the Joker. Sometimes people just want to see the world burn. Stuff that just sort of stays with you and is applicable to our world we live in now. I'd have to put Dark Knight up there. And two other ones that, there's so many other ones. I went to school with I grew up with the Coen brothers. So it's pretty hard to avoid my St. Louis Park connections with them. And it's a tough call, but I would say No Country for Old Men.
That's my favorite of the Coen brothers. That's a great one.
It's a classic. It really is. And I can watch that with Tommy Lee Jones and of course the Brolin and Sugar. Just the whole thing was phenomenal. How many is that up to now?
That's 4. I know you're wearing your pink Barbie golf shirt. I hope you don't go.
I did see that.
What's that?
I'm not going to go with Barbie. I did see it over the weekend. I also saw Oppenheimer, which is a phenomenal movie, but I wouldn't put it in my top 5. I think I'm going to have to go. It was between Shawshank Redemption and Saving Private Ryan, but because my dad was a World War II vet and he landed at Utah Beach, that movie hits me square between the eyes because of the stories he told me reluctantly years later about what that greatest generation went through, and I didn't really have any clue about it. But when I saw that movie and then later visited Omaha Beach and everything and watching it, there are probably some imperfections in it, but from a personal standpoint, I'd have to give the slight edge to Saving Private Ryan.
That's a good one. That's it. By the way, your list is better than most people's, just to let you know.
I was going to throw LA Confidential in there too, by the way. I love that movie.
Yeah. I tell
people to watch that.
Let me throw a few. I don't really give them my list anymore. I used to, but it's so I have Chinatown on my list.
Oh, understandable.
And I have The Graduate on my list. One that everyone says that I don't have on my list, but it's maybe the most popular movie is The Godfather. Did you like The Godfather and The Godfather 2?
Loved it. It was on my top 10 list. I literally wrote down 10. The Godfather and Godfather 2 are just classics, and I will watch them over and over and over again. Yes, they're on my list.
What about Sideways? Do you like Sideways?
I liked it a lot. I got hooked on it. I thought it was a really understated movie, and Giamatti was terrific, and the whole storyline and made you kind of weepy a little bit. It was well done. Yeah. I loved the movie. Yeah. Yes, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. Okay, brother. We're gonna keep it moving. We're gonna end on the Life Gorgeous quiz. This is simple questions, profound insights. I only have 2 questions today.
All right.
First one, I've asked people this. What is your first concert little Mark Rosen ever went to?
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I think the first concert I saw may have been at Met Center, and or was that at Minneapolis Auditorium? I saw Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young.
Wow.
Very young. And I saw Elton John
Whoa.
when he was jumping up and down on his piano at the auditorium. So I would say those were probably the earliest concert memories that I had.
Is that high school or when is that?
Yeah, late in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. Elton John, I think it was early college, but he was a very spry Elton John at that time. So that was probably the first ones I remember.
Those are good. I went in like 5th or 6th grade. It was weird because my dad somehow got tickets, and then I didn't go to a concert again until maybe my freshman year at Montana State when Huey Lewis and the News came to Bozeman. But which I'm not a fan of. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, Huey, but I'm not a fan necessarily. But the first concert was at the St. Paul Civic Center. And Randy Jackson had just joined the Jackson 5, so they were called the Jacksons.
Wow.
And I saw them, and I was young, and my brother, we couldn't believe there was a strobe light, and they were dancing to a strobe light, and we freaked out. It was very electric for both of us.
I can understand that. I mean, you go through the years, and obviously our guy Prince here, I saw him a number of times, both at Paisley Park and then at XL Center when he was just phenomenal. And to this day, I still miss his presence. He was electric beyond, just incredible.
I saw him twice in concert, Met Center, Purple Rain Tour, and I saw the Love Sexy Tour at the LA Forum in Inglewood.
Oh, wow.
We're all proud of Prince. Final question. I've been doing this with people. I get a huge kick out of it. It's a food question.
Uh-oh.
Your top 3 sandwiches of all time, Mark.
Top 3 sandwiches.
Yes, and it's big for me because I don't eat a lot of carbs, so it's a treat when I have a sandwich. I love sandwiches.
And I'm with you. I'd have to go because when I get it in my mindset, I will have to go to the ends of the earth to get a really good BLT.
Oh, nice.
So there's something special about crispy bacon, lettuce, and especially this time of year, the tomatoes are fantastic.
Yep.
So I would say BLT number 1.
That's good.
They actually named a sandwich after me over at this little delicatessen where I used to work at the drugstore before I got my job at WCCO, and it's a roast beef with horseradish sauce on it, and it melts in your mouth. So I would have to say that would be number 2.
Is it called the Rosie or what's it called?
It's called it's called the Rosen, I think.
Rosen.
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, all the St. Louis Park, like Al Franken and the Coen brothers, all these guys have sandwiches named, and I got there, I went, oh my God. They nailed it.
Yeah. I love horseradish cream and horseradish sauce. It's great.
Yeah. And I got to tell you the third one, because every time I see someone make one on screen or whatever else, and it's obviously a Minnesota winter one, just a really great grilled cheese with toasted, a grilled cheese sandwich. It's simple, but maybe put a slice of ham on it.
Yep.
So I'd have to go with those 3 as my top 3.
It's interesting because that's a good list. I'm going to tell you mine in a second, but you did it. I love it because you did it on the spot and you came up with 3 really good ones. I get a little irritated. People they'll name a specific deli somewhere where it's an Italian one with salami, and I say, okay, that's fine. So it's an Italian you like, which I like too, with the vinaigrette and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
And the ones that bother me are like, they say a chicken parm sandwich or a meatball sandwich. Like, those aren't real sandwiches. So here's
sandwiches.
Quickly are my 3. I love Rubens. I love sauerkraut. I don't care if it's corned beef or pastrami. I like both. And I also like rye bread a lot, but I also like pumpernickel.
Yeah.
I have 2 warm sandwiches, but I'm going to go with my second one. I'm going to go with the cold sandwich. I love chicken salad. I always have. I love chicken salad. It can be with walnuts or grapes or apples. I love it with red onions, tomatoes, lettuce on rye. And the third one is a little controversial. And I named it, and then Princess Cherry said, what about a grilled cheese? I go, you're right, I should put a grilled cheese on there. But my original one, the controversial one, is tuna melt.
Oh, I may have one after I'm done with you here to go have some lunch. They make them downstairs here. Now you got my mouth is watering.
Because some people don't like them. They think they're too strong of an odor or something, but I love tuna melts.
They're good. Awfully good. Good list.
Well, buddy, this was a joy for me. I could do a joke. I could say I grew up watching you, but I won't do that joke because you're not that old. We're both around the same age, give or take. But I'll see you in a few weeks. I'm not sure when this airs because I'm doing a few. I'm loading up on a few because I got to take a week off to come to Minneapolis. But thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I can't wait to see you. Your friendship means a lot to me, and I look forward to always spending time with you. And it's so much fun to connect. And I'll never forget when I came out. My son was graduating high school in 2004, and you had Garnett and Cassell and Sprewell on your show, and I came out, and you were such a gracious host to me and my crew, and we never forgot that. That was very kind of you, and we had a lot of fun out there.
Thank you, Rosie. I will see you in a few weeks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you for watching. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.